Good morning and welcome to World News here on TVP World. I'm your host, Diana Skaya. Foreign ministers of NATO member states are slowly arriving to the venue of their gathering in Brussels. Now, today's agenda involves only 2 points: a meeting of the North Atlantic Council and a statement from the Alliance's Secretary General Mark Rutte. Increased defense investment is the key item on the agenda of the NATO Foreign Ministers Summit in the Belgian capital. Now, apart from talking about expanding defense budgets, the officials are also discussing the war in Ukraine and relations with partners from the Indo-Pacific region. Meanwhile, Thursday brought questions about the United States military presence in Europe. And to quell all doubts, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said there were no plans of redeploying American soldiers out of Europe. Rubio also appealed to allied member states to increase their defense spending to 5% of their GDP. Russia will remain a long-term threat to the EU no matter what the outcome of the war in Ukraine is, said EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas during a joint press briefing with Polish Defense Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz. Kallas and European defense ministers gathered over the past 2 days in Warsaw for a series of informal meetings aiming to establish implementation measures on the White Paper for European Defense 2030.
Poland plans to spend 4.7% of GDP this year, the most among NATO countries, among the European Union countries. We will continue to do so. 5% is certainly the target we want to reach next year. We're already getting closer and closer to 5%, and even because of the multi-year contracts we've signed, we have to maintain a high level of spending for the next few years. Poland also has great support. The Polish government has great support among its citizens about this decision. 80% of our compatriots support increasing spending on security, on armaments. We know what Russia is. We know what a threat Russia is.
Russia will remain a long-term threat to the European Union, no matter the outcome of its war in Ukraine. So strengthening Europe's own defense capabilities is also crucial. The best way to prevent the war is to be unmistakably ready to win one. The White Paper on Defense outlines a clear path forward. It includes up to 800 billion euros, freeing up to 800 billion euros for defense, pooling resources for joint projects, and closer cooperation also with partners. Filling critical capability gaps like drones, air defense, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity must be priority.
On Thursday, Russian President Vladimir Putin's investment envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, described, quote, a positive dynamic in relations with the United States. The Russian official emphasized, though, that further dialogue is needed to sort out differences between Moscow and Washington. Speaking to Russian and U.S. media outlets after talks with Trump administration officials, Dmitriev said the talks signaled the beginning of a possible resolution to the conflict in Ukraine. Dmitriev's visit to Washington, D.C. follows recent U.S.-Russia talks in Saudi Arabia and the agreement on a U.S.-brokered ceasefire against energy targets. Now, Putin's envoy said talks with officials in Washington touched on matters of rare metals production, cooperation in the Arctic region, and restoring direct air links. Dmitriev went on to add that talks also included topics of space exploration and the possibility of sending a U.S.-Russian crude flight to Mars.
Yeah, for us, it was very important that we particularly brought Kandinsky.
President Donald Trump's decision to impose tariffs on allied countries is a real blow to U.S. credibility. That's according to Jan Brzezinski, senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, who recently joined TVP World's Adam Yasser to discuss Trump's new tariff regime on countries around the globe.
What is happening to trust in all of this? It's a word that seems to have vanished from the vocabulary, trust. And, there are two ways of looking at it. When President Trump talks about trust, he says he trusts Vladimir Putin's words about wanting to finish the war in Ukraine. But in other contexts, it's confrontational. It's allies taking advantage of America. To many observers in Europe, citizens, this is the other way around. You shouldn't trust
Adam,
Putin. You should trust the allies.
I completely agree with you on this. I mean, this is the third hit to the credibility of the United States among our allies, our closest allies in Europe and globally. The first is when he said he's not going to defend, President Trump said he's not going to defend allies that don't spend enough on defense. The second and perhaps most devastating was his decision to suspend the flow of intelligence information and material assistance to the Ukrainians. That was a devastating blow to U.S. credibility. And the third is this imposition of tariffs as a way to, quote unquote, force our allies into concessions as to working with them, as opposed to working together with them into a more equitable arrangement. So I agree with you. This is a real hit to U.S. credibility.
Time will tell whether Donald Trump's tariffs will bring business back to the United States. But for now, the American market will experience major difficulties. This is the opinion of Polish Deputy Development and Technology Minister Michał Baranowski, who was a guest on World News Tonight.
His hypothesis, I guess, is that by putting such high tariffs, wall of tariffs around the United States, that companies will decide to produce inside the United States. Now, it's certainly hugely disruptive to the American economy and the global economy. Right now, we are seeing the pain that U.S. economy is going through and the pain it will inflict on other economies. Whether this works for America, we'll know in many, many quarters. It's disrupting supply chains. It is not, well, all economists really have been saying that that's not the way to go about it. U.S. is a sovereign country, but then, of course, will be met with retaliatory measures from countries around the world, and China, for example, has already responded. So is Canada, and EU will be preparing again on Monday for specific measures that will be taken vis-à-vis the United States.
At least 4 people have been killed and more than 30 wounded in a Russian drone strike on Ukraine's second largest city of Kharkiv. Thursday's attack sparked a series of fires in a residential district. Video released by the State Emergency Service of Ukraine shows firefighters rescuing residents from their burning homes. Kharkiv in northeastern Ukraine is just 30 kilometers from the Russian border and has been targeted by nightly attacks over the past week. In the central city of Dnipro, a local official reported that a mass drone strike left 3 people wounded. And in southern Zaporizhia, a local governor reported the drone strikes injured 1 person. While flying from Washington, D.C. to Florida, Donald Trump was asked about the progress in negotiations on peace in Ukraine. Trump said that so far the European Union was unsuccessful in dealing with Putin, simultaneously claiming that he will achieve a diplomatic solution to the conflict with the Kremlin.
We'd like to see that stop as soon as possible because thousands of people are being killed a week, soldiers, mostly soldiers, and Ukrainian soldiers and Russian soldiers. And you're losing 2,000, 3,000 sometimes a week. So we're spearheading the drive to get it done. Europe has not been successful in dealing with President Putin, but I think I will be successful.
Poland has handed over another 5,000 Starlink enterprise terminals to Ukraine, the Ukrainian Ministry of Digital Transformation said on Thursday. According to the ministry, Poland has so far donated 29,500 of these systems to its neighbor. The ministry hopes that these Starlinks will help restore communications in the territories liberated from Russian occupation, improve the operation of schools, medical and social facilities, and as well the work of energy and military personnel. Now, Starlink Enterprise is a new version of Starlinks equipped with strong antennae which guarantee higher speed and stable internet connectivity. The ministry thanked the Polish Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Digitalization Krzysztof Gawkowski, the Polish and German governments, and other partners for their help. So far, Ukraine's partners have donated 50,000 of these systems to Kyiv. Denmark is strengthening its presence in the Arctic as Donald Trump's administration maintains its intention to acquire Greenland. During a recent visit to Nuuk, the capital of Greenland, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said that the argument that the island is vital for international security does not validate annexation.
This is not only about Greenland or Denmark. This is about the world order that we have built together across the Atlantic over generations. You cannot annex another country, not even with an argument about international security. Talking about security, then there is a lot that we and you can do. Denmark is now strengthening our own presence. New Arctic ships, long-range drones and satellite capacity. We uphold our commitments and more is on its way.
Recent rapprochement of Russia and the United States will only have limited results and might eventually neutralize Russia's position on certain topics, but it will not draw Russia away from China. This is the opinion of Velina Chakharova, the founder of Face Geopolitical Consulting, who was a guest on TVP World's Eastern Express. Let's listen.
I don't think that anybody in this Trump administration is realistic about the potential of a reverse Nixon-Kissinger approach to Russia. Practically what was applied to China in the 70s through the entanglement of China into all US-led networks and relevant systems to lure China away from the Soviet Union, and which later also resulted in the collapse of the Soviet Union. So to wrap it up for you, I think that this relaunch of the strategic dialogue between US and Russia aims to create a platform, or better said, several different platforms for engagement between Washington and Moscow, which should result in some sort of neutralization of this Russian position.
Center of discussions on the future of Polish education on Thursday. Teachers, parents, and experts met at a gathering dubbed the Education Forum to address their concerns about the state of education in the nation. TVP World was on site, and we have this next report for you.
The 40th edition of the Education Forum in Warsaw gathered teachers and experts to discuss the key challenges facing Poland's education system. While academic performance remains relatively high, recent studies by the Ministry of Education have revealed that many students and teachers struggle with well-being in the school environment. According to recent national surveys, 40% of respondents think that Poland's primary and secondary education is worse than in the rest of the EU, while 33% feel the same about higher education institutions.
There are many challenges, but the three, I would say, that are discussed today are the crisis of psychological health among students, but generally in society, and this is one of the challenges that the school is facing, and the teacher has to deal with the problem.
At the forum, deputy mayors of Poland's largest cities, Warsaw, Kraków, Białystok and Poznań, shared their experiences and exchanged ideas on improving education and student satisfaction in their regions. TVP World host Anna Kalczynska also joined the discussion, emphasizing that collaboration between parents and teachers is key to a successful education system.
They have to cooperate with teachers together in building a better future for our children, for the pupils in schools.
While artificial intelligence offers new opportunities for learning, experts are warning that it also poses risks, including the spread of disinformation, academic dishonesty, and widening inequalities in access to technology. The forum highlighted the urgent need for digital literacy programs to help students critically assess online content and use AI responsibly.
We really need to focus more on the resilience especially of the young population, and they really need our help to know when, for example, the smartphone is helping us in learning and when it is an addiction.
As Poland looks ahead, the key takeaways from the forum is that education must evolve not just to maintain academic standards, but to create schools where students and teachers thrive.
And that's all for now. My name is Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching and stay with us here on TVP World.